In this review, I wanted to talk about a cinema screen that Cineworld have called Screen X. I'd actually never heard of it until yesterday, and I've checked it out today, and I just wanted to let you know what I thought. So you'll probably be aware of the 4DX screens. These are, as far as I'm aware, commonplace. Pretty much every Cineworld has the 4DX, and these are absolutely awesome screens. They've just upgraded them recently, where the seats move, you get water spray, you even get like lightning effects and scent and things flapping against your feet to creep you out, and so really good. You know, they're not that new, you've probably heard of them. Definitely worth checking out. But this Screen X I'd never heard of. Obviously I've heard of IMAX, but Screen X, that was new to me. And what it is, it's a 270 degree viewing angle of a screen. So if you imagine, if you're a gamer, imagine if you had three PC screens. Your normal one that you have right in front of you, and then you attach an additional one on either side. So you've essentially now got three screens, and it's giving you that much more panoramic view, you know, of your games, which is awesome. But does it work for cinema? Well, the way it was done in Castleford, for me, it just didn't work. The two additional screens were on the walls, and the walls were just the side walls. So imagine any cinema that you've been to, it's a traditional square room with, you know, well, it's a square room. And imagine there being additional content on either side of the wall. At first you think that sounds really good, and I definitely wanted to check it out. But for me, it just didn't work. I mean, maybe if I was sat literally right at the back, it might have been different. But it just wasn't great. So I'm going to explain why. I'm going to tell you what was good about it, what was bad about it. But I mean, let me just crunch the numbers, because I always think, like, I need to know if I'm going to a cinema. I mean, I have my Cineworld where I go, I can see as many movies as I want for a fixed fee. So the more I go and see, the better value I get. But if I didn't have that, and if you don't have that, you need to be asking, is it worth the money? Now, as a Cineworld customer, with this pass, I get in for any movie, including 3D, because I've been a member for over a year, so you get 3D included as well. I can see any movie for free. Just show my card, bang, in you go, as many times as I want, with the exception of the 4DX and Screen X. There's a small premium to pay on top. So the 4DX, for instance, you pay, I'm pretty sure it's £4.13. That's an additional charge. So if you were going on your own without the Cine Pass, I think it's like, well, I was going to take my niece to see Wreck-It Ralph, and for an adult, it was £17 to sit in the 4DX seats. £17, you know, so that's a lot of money. Now, the Screen X was an additional premium of £3. So I'm guessing, therefore, as a normal paying adult, if you're paying the full price, it could be costing you in the region of £16. And for me, no way is it worth it. I mean, save your money, spend it on ice cream. Get yourself some ice cream instead, or better still, spend the money on a 4DX experience, because the 4DX is awesome from start to finish. You know, you're constantly getting shaken about. It's a real experience when you go to watch a movie with those in those seats. Whereas with this, I actually went to see Crimes of the Grindelwald, you know, the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts. Now, I'd already seen it, so I was able to not worry too much about watching the screen, and I was more just taking in the experience. And the first thing I found is, well, for start-offs, it was only all three, like, sides, all three screens, if you consider that the wall on either side is an additional screen to make three screens. All three screens were only lit up like maybe 5% of the time. And to me, that just isn't good value for money. So when there isn't a particular scene on show that they think warrants all 3 screens being on, the 2 side walls are just kind of lit, but not bright so that it's totally distracting you from the main screen. But nevertheless, they only, if all 3 screens were up all of the time, then maybe it would have been a more immersive experience and you would have kind of got used to all 3 screens being there. But because it only came up for certain scenes, it made you feel like you had to look left and right to see what was going on both of those screens. And I'm not quite sure how they do it, because for some of the shots it was spectacular, like when it was showing the cliffs of Dover, for instance. You're seeing like a massive panoramic view, and it works really well. But then for other scenes, like for instance, there's a scene right at the end which is fantastic, absolutely brilliant scene at the end. I was thinking, yeah, this is going to pay off this. But to be honest, it didn't. When I originally saw the film, I was in a really quite wide screen. It was like one of the main screens, so the cinema screen was particularly big and quite widescreen. And I found, watching it on that screen, the end sequence was spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And while on this triple screen layout it was still really good, it actually took some of the experience away slightly, because you were literally looking left and right and wanting to see what was on the left wall and what was on the right wall, while you're missing what's going on directly in front of you. So for me, yeah, it just didn't work. And the fact that it only comes up for certain screens, I just think if you're paying all this extra money, for me it was a £3 add-on. I don't buy that it was worth it. Certainly not for the Harry Potter film. I mean, maybe for something like Queen, or for Bohemian Rhapsody, where you can imagine if you were in a stadium, you'd be seeing all the crowd left and right, and you'd feel like you were there in the stadium while they're performing a gig. I can imagine for bits like that it is utterly spectacular. But if you're wanting to try it out, be very selective about what film you pick. Think about it, because for me, a lot of the time it didn't work. And how they get these additional screens as well, because it looks like it is literally additional content that they've got, and what it almost looked like they're doing is kind of zooming in to the original screen and then kind of expanding it onto the side walls. But it wasn't just that, there was a hell of a lot of additional content as well. So it's really clever. However they do it, it is exceptionally clever. But for me, it just doesn't work. Now, I was sat probably 4 rows from the back, so pretty much at the back, and I didn't feel I was far enough back. I think if you're going to do it, make sure you book it for a screen where you are literally right at the back. I think that's the only way it can possibly work. But for me, I enjoyed Fantastic Beasts much more when I watched it on a normal screen, and I actually sat really close to the front, and that was fully immersive and just brilliant. So for me, the 3-screener, £3 additional add-on as a Cineworld subscriber. Was it worth the £3? No way. I would much rather put that money towards some ice cream, pay an extra £1 and I can get a 3-scoop ice cream basically. Or most importantly, I would rather, much rather put that money towards the 4DX experience, because that is something I treat myself to only on very rare occasions, but when I do, I thoroughly enjoy it. I have the time of my life. It's like being on a roller coaster, and you come away, although I don't mind paying the £4. For me, the £4.13 extra, whatever it is, to me it's worth it. It's money well spent for the extra treat. But that £3 was just £3 down the drain. Absolutely, not worth it. Don't get me wrong, as a one-off experience, I'm glad to have tried it. I always like to try new things, and I wouldn't put you off giving it a try yourself if that's what you want to do. But just, if you do, make sure you sit at the very back and be warned, it's quite possibly not the amazing experience that you'd be thinking. I mean, anybody sat at the front or near the front, you might as well not have these 2 additional screens, because you would literally have to be looking left and looking right, turning your head dramatically. I guess the intention of it is for your peripheral vision just to take in the additional surroundings. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what it's intended for. Like it's not like there's stuff going on the left side of the wall and the right side of the wall that's integral to the story. It's not. It's just, for instance, if it might just be additional buildings, to make it feel like you are in the scene rather than watching the scene from afar. So I think it's intended just for your peripheral vision. But where that falls down is the fact that the 3 screens are not permanently up, because the 3 screens go down and then back up again and down. And for me, I think the 3 screens were active for, like I say, 5% of the time, if that, maybe 10%, but honestly, it felt like they were hardly up. It felt like they were hardly ever showing you all 3 screens. So I don't entirely buy it, and for me, it just didn't quite work. But it's intended, I think, for the peripheral vision, and for that to work, it needs to always be there, because then you would feel constantly immersed in this world. And I think if they did that, it could actually be brilliant. But because it flashes up every now and again, you're feeling, oh, what's going on that side of the screen? Oh, what's going on over there? And the other thing that could have made it better, now obviously they would have needed a special auditorium for this to work, but is just to have additional screens on either side. Have it positioned like you would have your 3 monitors at home if you were gaming. So instead of like making a rectangle out of the screens, you'd make them more of a less of a steep angle, so it almost just looks like one big wide screen. But obviously for them to do that in a cinema, they would have to build an auditorium specially for it, and in that case, why not just have an extra super wide screen? So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. It was a different experience. Glad to have tried it, glad to have had the opportunity to try it. But there aren't many screens with Cineworld that do it. When I looked at the list, there was maybe 5 or 10 screens across the country that do it. Leeds have one, Castleford, which is near Leeds, there's a couple in London, and then aside from that, I wasn't really too sure. So don't travel afar to check it out specifically, but if you get the chance, make sure you're at the back. But make sure it's a spectacular movie that you're going to see. Because if you pay like 15 quid to see a half decent movie, you're going to come away feeling quite angry. I think it'll be money not well spent. For me, it's not worth the extra money. But let me know what you think. Did I miss the point? Are you just meant to be peripheral in it? I don't know. If they need that, it needs to be up all the time. Didn't really work for me. I'm surprised it was so popular, because the screen was actually pretty busy, the one that I went to. So yeah, I'd love to know what you think. What's your favourite experience at the cinema? Personally, mine is 4DX. I absolutely love it, but I don't go all the time. I only go for the real action-packed movies. Otherwise, I'd quite happily just sit quietly and enjoy my ice cream. So let me know what you think, and have you been to see any Screen X showings? If so, which ones? Let me know.